Coming to you from the heart of East Oxford.
Three, two, one.
Thank you very much. Tell me something. So this thing will be on video rather than on.
Yes.
I see. So
Yeah,
when
the trick with something like this is you have to get clips, and I'll get maybe 5 seconds of something that gets said that then we can basically make it go viral. That's the trick to this. Any kind of podcast, you have to just get something that's just so outrageous, or you talking about who was it? Your brother snogging
Queen Camilla,
Queen Camilla
when she was in Paris.
Yeah.
You want me to say that? My brother,
and she had terrible breath. But did you hear?
she had halitosis.
She had terrible halitosis. But did you hear that Biden met Princess Camilla, and Biden farted so bad that Camilla had to leave the room? She says, "That man, he just keeps he farted so bad, she had to run out of the room." Things like that can go viral.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you let me know when we're going to get going, because I'm going to ramble on, and then if you want to stop and then say, "Look, you've got it all wrong," and you can edit out anything you don't care.
I don't care. It's just like a conversation we would have when we would be standing outside our houses talking to each
other. Yeah. Well, I think I've said everything I had to say.
Tell me about where you grew up. Where did you grow up? And how does France come into that?
Yeah. Are we starting now or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, basically, I was born in 1939 at the outbreak of the Second World War. And at the time, my father and mother and my siblings lived at the Château Saint-Victor, and just outside Tours. And the chateau itself had been a wine-growing property, so it was actually called Le Clos Saint-Victor. Clos means wine growing. It was called Le Clos Saint-Victor, and it was always referred to as Le Clos. Anyway, we lived there, and I have photographs of me as a young lad, 1-year-old, 2-year-olds there. But in about 1941, the Wehrmacht requisitioned the property, their local headquarters, and we were moved to Paris, where we had a flat. And the flat was Boulevard Lannes, which became a well-known address because Edith Piaf ended up living on the ground floor there. And we lived on the 5th floor. And so I was born there. My father was drafted back in the French army in 1939. He'd been, first of all, in the First World War, aged 18 in the trenches. And so therefore it was a...
did he suffer from...
No, but
any issues with...
No. In those days, people didn't get post-traumatic anything. They just bloody got on with it. So, of course, he fought the battles where he had actually got... he had 2 toes removed because he got frostbite in the trenches. But he was 18 in 1916 when he was sent out there. He did 2 years in the trenches and then came home. Got on with his life. The family owned an insurance company called Le Soleil, which was, I think, bought by Zurich company. Anyway, my father went to work for Zurich as an inspector. So he traveled all over France, inspecting claims. And then in 1939, he was drafted back. So it was, I think they call it Hog Grounds Day, or, when things go, say, well, what's that expression you use in America?
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day. It was Groundhog Day for him, suddenly back in uniform, suddenly back on the bloody front line. Well, of course, the Germans didn't mess around fighting them. They just went round the side. The French army up there. And because what they'd done, they'd sort of made huge fortifications all along Belgium and everywhere else. And the Germans just went through the Jura. with their tanks and everything, and left the French standing there were behind them. So the whole French army was basically captured. And they had so many prisoners, they didn't know what to do with them. And this was August, and it was incredibly hot. So what they did is they put all the prisoners in fields and put barbed wire around them, wondering what the hell they were going to do with them.
Just throw food over the barbed wire.
Sort of thing. They had very elderly guys looking after him. Anyway, it was easy to escape. So my father legged it with his best friend, who was with him, called Baron Philippe de la Chapelle. Two barons. They went under the wire and, traveling at night, walked back to Paris, where the whole French army was disbanded anyway. So he was civilian again at about 90. And I've got a photograph of him holding me in his arms when he returned from the front, having been mobilized. I think that's the expression. You're taken out of the army. So he then went back to work, and he went, and my family lived in Paris, and that's where I grew up. So I stayed from the age of 2 to the age of 10. I was basically lived in Paris, educated in Paris, etc., etc. My family was.
Were the Germans?
Well, the Germans left in 1943. They left Paris in 1944. So the Germans were kicked out. But I mean, I have memories of people shooting in the streets, etc. I remember German soldiers. I remember helmets, etc., etc. I actually, with my nanny, called one German sentry a Salbosch. my nurse quickly pulled me away. I was a fiery little sod. Can you imagine? Anyway, there was my sister was actually in a demonstration. There was still some German snipers. A woman next to her was shot and fell on top of her. They were shooting, and they all went flat. And this woman fell. She was all of this was the end of the war. The less, if you look about what happened at the end of the war, of course, is that there was tremendous vengeance taken out on people they thought would collaborate. If you didn't like somebody, you would go and see your friend and say, he was a collaborator. I saw him taking money from a German. There was a huge amount of score settling. 20,000 women were shaved, tarred and feathered, beaten, raped, tortured. 20,000 because they consorted with German soldiers. It's a natural scandal. It was swept under the carpet for a long time, and it's appeared now with women getting out of that. And if you look it up, it's absolutely shocking. Because, of course, all these nasty little people who'd been cowed away by the Germans suddenly took it out on the people who'd sort of, what they thought, fraternized.
That could be someone running a grocery. They were selling groceries.
Easily. Imagine there was had a German garrison there, and they said, "Can you supply us with cabbage and things?"
Exactly.
Supplying them, that said, "You're a collaborator," and they got beaten up, tortured, and if the daughter had seen a really handsome German soldier and started going out with him, that was it. 20,000. Read about it. It's shocking. Anyway, cut a long story short, at the age of 10, my mother was a great admirer of les Anglo-Saxons. She'd always been an admirer of America. She lived in America. She liked Americans, Canadians, and the Brits. She thought they were bloody wonderful. She thought the French were the she'd seen them basically routed in 1939. She'd seen this score settling immediately after the war, where people were snitching on each other, and a huge amount of terrible things happened. Terrible. And it was kept quiet for a long time, but it's come out recently. And she just thought the French were just absolutely. So she sent me to an English prep school, aged 10 years old. So I arrived at this prep school, a place called St. Bede's in Eastbourne.
How was your English at this point?
I had no English at all. In French, a bouc is a male sheep. It's a ram. So when somebody said bouc,
Buck.
I thought it was a ram. But no, it was a bouc. That's how little English I knew. I knew no English at all. So I arrived at this prep school. I was incredibly homesick. And I stayed in bed, basically, wanting to die. And there was another French boy there. In fact, he wasn't French, he was half Russian, called Danny Kandaurov, who was a prince, Prince Kandaurov. And he took, he spoke French. He lived in Paris as well. So he came and held my hand. And still know him. He's now 80, I'm 85. He would be 86, coming 87. He lives in Lausanne. But I mean, he looks 87.
It's a rough 87.
Yeah, he looks like an 87-year-old. He looks like an old man. I don't.
Not like you look like 45.
Well, not 45, but certainly not 85. Anyway, as my girlfriend can testify. Anyway, to go on. So, of course, what happens is the human condition is such that you adapt to anything. By the end of my first term, I spoke English. I spoke enough English to get around. Words like, come on, to the other boys. Come on, let's do this. You know, these sort of things. Very basic vocabulary, but enough to kill them. And I started to love it because, of course, we were by the seaside. And it was, we used to go down to the beach. We could walk down to the beach, Pebble Beach, from our school. It was very small at the time.
What was the name of the school?
St. Bede's.
St. Beans.
Bede's.
Bede's.
B-E-D. Bede. St. Bede was a saint.
Oh.
St. Bede. So St. Bede's school. Anyway, over the period that I was there till the age of 13 when I did my common entrance, in English, obviously, and I then went up to Uppingham. Funnily enough, Danny Kandaurov also went to Uppingham. So we went not just mates at prep school, but at public school. And because he was thick, he was, in my year, a year lower than he should have been. So we were always together. And we were very close friends. But I made lots of other friends because I never had any, I was never bullied. I could have been, being French.
Yes.
I was never bullied. I was good at rugby, which of course was very vital if you were good at sports and had your mates. I made some very good friends. I was just thinking last night about when we were going to talk about this, that I had one particular friend who I would have been about 15, and the summer holidays, I went a couple of years to his house. He lived in Manchester. They were a very wealthy family. And we used to go to Triada Bay, which is up in Anglesey, where they had a house there. And they had dinghies and sailing boats. And we used to spend the 2 or 3 weeks up there. We'd be in the boats all the time, in and out of the boats. And we had some incredible weather. So it was like being in the south of France. It was brilliant. So we had a lot of fun. And at school itself, I actually began to enjoy school. Initially at Uppingham, you had, in those days, what they called fags, which means it was a fagging system. So the prefects, the house prefects, shout, fag! And then all the little boys would have to run upstairs and he'd say, you, go and clean my boots. You, go and sweep my carpet. Because we all had our studies. So I remember quite distinctly being on all fours, sweeping a chap called Latham, who I'm sure is dead now, because he'd be about 3 or 4 years older than I am now. So a nasty piece of work, sweeping his carpet and breathing in his dust and swearing to myself I would get him one day. Funnily enough, as an aside, I had a couple of occasions when I got vengeance. One was when at Uppingham, all the senior boys who became either house prefects or what they call school prefects. If you were a school prefect, you wore tails and a bow tie. And you were very, very, very senior and very important. And if you were anything else, you had to be very careful how you treat. Well, there was one particular school prefect who was a really nasty piece of work, unpleasant. And remember, they had the power to give you beatings. etc. So, you could be called up middle of the night, like from your dormitory, in your dressing gown to the bathroom where they'd be sitting there in judgment and say, "You told a lie." And you'd say, "No, I didn't, sir, I didn't." They'd bend over and they'd beat you. This is what it was like in 1954, 53 at Uppingham. I'm going to go back here.
Yeah. Stick
And
as close as you can to the microphone.
So it was very, very tough. Now, I was only on one occasion called up when I was first at Uppingham for some trivial thing I'd done. And they were going to, and they said, "You did this or that," and I said, "I swear on the Holy Virgin Mary that I didn't do it." Well, if he's sworn on the Holy Virgin Mary, it must be true. So they let me.
That's where you learn to lie.
Yes. I learned that if you slap religion into it, they're going to think, "Oh, well, we can't say anything about that." So I got off that one. But there was some terrible beats. I remember one boy, I wouldn't mention his name, and I don't know what he'd done, but they didn't like him because he looked like a girl. And some of the senior boys had done things with him. And then they probably felt very disgusted with themselves. So they decided, on a trumped-up charge, that he'd done something wrong. They were going to give him a school beating.
How old would these boys be that were?
Maybe 17. 17 going on to 18, because they all left at 18. And the boys would have been 14. And this particular boy, as I say, he looked like a girl. He was shaped like a girl. So in the shower, you could see he'd got buttocks, hips. And of course, some of the older boys lusted after him and probably got him to. God knows what happened. But anyway, we obviously thought, this is disgusting. A bit like Monty Python. You can imagine saying, "That's disgusting." Anyway, we decided they were going to get him. And they give him this beating, a cane, where basically the boy bent over, and then on the horse was a gym instrument. You could jump over. They bent him over the horse at a certain height. And then they had a table which they angled against his bum. And then so that the cane slid along the top and hit the same spot. And they'd give him 6 strokes of really hard. Of course, the next day the guys. I mean, today, that would be a criminal offense, without doubt.
And what would the headmaster be saying to all of this?
Oh, nothing. It's all part of it.
All part of the fun.
Yeah. And our housemaster was a particularly unpleasant man. He was a nasty piece of. He was a really unpleasant human being.
That saying, hurt people.
What do you mean by that?
Hurt people.
Yeah. Well, this poor guy must have been marked for life. And funnily enough, I can't say where, but he ended up living quite close to where I lived about in 1965. So he obviously had money, and I actually saw him there, and he looked okay. I knew his name, I recognized him. I didn't say anything, but several things happened where my venture. So this senior, what do you call him? Senior
Housemaster.
No. Oh God, he was a vile man. No, the senior prefect I'm referring to. Years later, I used to have a red E-Type, and I was driving back from Paris, and I saw on the side of the road this guy. I recognized him, hitchhiking, and so I stopped. It was on the N1. The A1 didn't exist then. The national one, the N1. So I stopped, and he said, "Bouger, hi," and he got his bag. I said, "Fuck off," and drove off. I drove off, I rolled off, leaving him just to let him know. But funnily enough, the head boy at the time, the head of games, the same period, when I was about 15, was our hero. I won't mention his name. I think I should. You want to know his name? Anyway, he was a chap called James Bembroke. And he was a hero of all the school. He was a brilliant rugby player, brilliant cricketer, brilliant at everything. He was good looking, he was charming, he was friendly, approachable, and everybody loved him. When I went up to Cambridge, there he was. And we became buddies, and we've been buddies ever since. So isn't it funny? But my hero, when I was on the touchline watching him play rugby and thinking, God, come on, Ben Rose, come on, suddenly became my friend, or probably my best friend, or one of my best friends anyway. Funny, isn't it? Because we did, I'll talk about that in a second. We did a business together. We've got to be careful what we say on this. But anyway, I will go for it. So anyway, so then I had another instance two more instances when I got my own back. One was when the headmaster at the time, a chap called Martin Lloyd, was headmaster. Totally unapproachable, really, really important. He became postmaster in a village called Painswick. And I happened to own the manor house of the next village. And my wife, we bought this manor house down in Gloucestershire, and in the next village called Sheepscombe. And so I went into the post office. There was my old headmaster, who tried to be very friendly. I was able to be unfriendly. And then the third time it happened was when I was in the French army. I did my national service in the French army.
Not the UK Army. You went back to France and did it there.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about that in a minute. So when I'm just capping on the vengeance in life, the funny coincidences. There was a lieutenant who was, all of us were called up. We were national servicemen. So we were known as a contingent, le contingent. We weren't professional soldiers who were just doing our national service. And he was one of us, but he'd gone in a year before us, and he'd become a lieutenant. And he was a right little shit. Vain, arrogant, and I thought, you little sod, if I ever get you on one day, I'm slapping. Well, in 1966, I became head of a company in Paris. In fact, an American company based in London, but I also became director of marketing of this French company. He was the accountant. So suddenly, in I waltz with Americans, in charge, etc. And there's this guy working as an accountant. I said, I know you. He said, I don't know you. I said, I know you. You were a lieutenant working in Val de Bicêtre in 1960. He said, oh no, that's my twin brother. I said, don't pull that one. I said, it's you. I said, don't worry, I've got you marked. I'm going to put a really good word in for you. And he was absolutely passion-faced. He couldn't believe it. So that was vengeance. And I was kind, because I could have fucking screwed. I didn't. Yeah, but it was funny just to see his expression. Anyway, so after Uppingham, I went to Cambridge. Now, when we were all in the sixth form, I was doing history, English, French to get my 3 A-levels. The form master was a really, really interesting guy, really nice guy. Said, right, guys, we're going to talk about which university you're going to go to. And so what university are you? I'm going to go to Leicester, sir, to study this. I'm going to go to, and Pouget, what are you thinking? I think I'm going to Cambridge, sir. Whole class. Pouget going to Cambridge, because I never did any work. They laughed their heads off. But anyway, I went to the interview at Cambridge, got in. I got into St. Catherine's College. Now the thing about Cambridge, and that's where I really met James Penrose, my great buddy, and a very good friend called Philippe Michaud, who was the heir to the Michelin Tower. Very, very wealthy family. Very close friend we became, and unfortunately he had a nervous breakdown and was locked up. I think probably because the rest of the family wanted him out of the way, so they carried the money. There were dastardly things going on there, but I wouldn't go into that. Anyway, while I was at Cambridge, I had a great time. I had such a great time that when it came to the exam, the year tertiary exam, I wasn't there. I was in Zurich with a girlfriend. So I didn't pass the exam because I didn't take it. So I was called in because I came back and they said, but you didn't take the bloody exam. I said, well, I thought it was next week. So I was called in by my tutor at CATS, and he said, listen, I warned you, you mess about, because I'd already, I'd always done several things that had upset
You're
him.
always right on the line, huh?
Yeah, sort of, climbing back into college late at night. This sort of. He said, I'd warned you that if you didn't pass your exam, I was going to sack you. And you didn't even take it. You're fired. He didn't quite say it like that. He said, you're out. So there was a guy there called Raymond Wilson. I don't know if he's still alive. He was very gifted. He was from the Seychelles. And he said to me, look, it's okay. He said, the same thing happened to me. And I went to, and he told me the college. And if you go to this college and you take, the course was anthropology. He said, it's dead cinch because it's all about black men's dicks. He said it's incredibly easy. And he specializes in rescuing guys like you, a bit of character and a bit of they would get kicked out. So go to, I couldn't be bothered. I thought I've had Cambridge. So I went to America. My poor mother sent me to America. And I went to America and I went initially to the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT. Rochester Institute of Technology, because it's Kodak and all that, where they had a very good commercial art section, where you learned all about being an artist for Kodak, for Disney. They had lots of guys learning the colors, drawings. Well, after about weeks of this, like this, on top of which I'd done something terrible, because remember, at age 20, I looked a bit like Alain Delon. I was a really good-looking guy. And so I could pull virtually anything. I didn't have to try.
All American girls chasing you.
Well, what happened was there was the prettiest girl at the RIT, was a little pretty blonde girl, but he had a boyfriend, and big bloke. And I thought, I fancy her. So I went up to her and I said, hey, I would like to come out with me one evening. Because my brother had given me a little Fiat sports car. I had a little sports car and everything, and I thought, and what I didn't realize is she had a pin. The pin meant she was pinned to this guy. They were an item. Oh my God, that went on really badly because of course she sort of looked at me. But I got it. So what?
Take it off.
So then, of course, I had this big guy saying, you better talk to my girl, so I thought, I said to my brother, I don't want to. My brother lived in Rochester. So I was there for about a month. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, look, I'd like to go to New York. So I went to New York and I joined a place called the Art Students League. And New York, New York was just my kettle of fish. 1960. It was just bloody brilliant. And
A lot different than Cambridge.
yes,
God.
yes, very different to Cambridge, very different to England. I mean, of course, but I made lots of friends, and I wouldn't go into my life in New York. I might write a book about it. I had a great time, and then I got called up. I got have emails in days, which had been forwarded to me, it had been addressed in Paris, saying that I was called up to the French army. So I had a choice. I could either go back to France and join the French army, or not go back. And the trouble was that I had a limited visa. And if I hadn't gone back, of course, I would have been a deserter. I didn't have much choice. I went back to France, arrived in France, and was from living as a hippie in New York. That's what I did. 2-3 a day, but really loose. The girls in those days, I think they just got the pill and they were just going right.
You had the British accent. They're like, oh, I love your accent. You were in.
Anyway, I had a whale of a time. And anyway, so I got back to Paris, and I was called up and I had to go down to Agen, in the Lot-et-Garonne, which is down in southwest France, and I was in the army. Now, the thing is, they didn't, I'm going to have to speed up a bit. I'm going into too much detail, probably quite amusing to tell you. I was still in civilian clothes after about 2 weeks. They hadn't given us our uniform. And I thought, what is this? I'm getting out of here. So I climbed the bloody wall and got out. I'd been used to climbing walls at Cambridge. I was out of there, got a train back to Paris. And my mother said, what are you doing? I said, I'm not staying. I'm going to go back. I've still got my visa. I'm going back to America. And she said, you can do that. You're a deserter. This is serious. The French army doesn't mess around. So she rang up cousin, hers, who was a general in the French army, called Général Suquet. So he came along, middle of the night, said, right, he said, you're potentially very serious. Bring up your colonel. You're going back tomorrow morning. You understand? Nothing will be done against you. I'm taking care. So I took the train back, got back here, and everybody thought, he's going. Nothing happened. Reintegrated into the French army. Anyway, I wouldn't go through my old French army, because then I was started off to Algeria, where I did the rest of my national service in Algeria, which was a war zone. It was like the French Vietnam. Oh yeah, it was serious. Yeah, well look it up. There's been a program recently on the radio on the BBC about the Algerian War. Anyway, so
How long were you there?
2 years. So when I got back to Civvy Street in 1963, having been under the control of the French system, I thought, never again getting out of France. I did. I went to England, where Omega, I met my first wife, came from the family, banking family. And we went off. I started working in a city. And I hated it. I had to wear a bowler hat in the pinstripe suit. And what amazed me was how ugly the people. Walk along my lunch and say, God, this is fucking ugly. Dead. So anyway, I left after 6 months. I went with Omega. We went every winter to Barbados, which in those days was very exclusive. It's not anymore. It was then. And so we were in Barbados, and she'd got the Times, bought the Times 3 days before. She threw it on the bed, and she said, Bobby, there's an advertisement there for, seems to me, perfect job for you. You know, so I looked at it. It said, International Publicity Director wanted, said, American company, etc. So, why don't you apply anyway? So I said, on the phone to my mother, I said, look, my mother said, I'll do you a curriculum vitae, and I'll do it for you.
Your poor mother's been there for all your life. Huh?
So
She
my
really
mum,
looked out for you, didn't she?
my mum on a typewriter, click, 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 typed this thing saying, I'm a Metrouge, I've been to the Oscars, New York, I speak 3 languages, etc., etc. And she sent this thing in. I never even. So then she rings me up in Barbados and says, you've got an interview. You've got an interview next Monday. I said, well, I can't, I'm here. She said, well, you better phone them up. So I got the number, so I rang. And it was, I tried to, in those days, can you imagine what happened? There's managing director of this company. Actually, a really nice turned out. And he was, like many people who run companies, without him, the company would have collapsed. He was the company. He was a human being who was just holding all these wankers together. And phone call came through, and he said, the manager of the switchboard, Bill Ormond, is Barbados here. I have Baron Pouget on the phone for Mr. Oh. There's a Baron Pouget from Barbados for you. Oh, hi, it's me. I'm afraid I can't come to the interview on Monday because I'm in Barbados, but I will be able to come another time. But of course, this guy, of all the applicants, the one who'd phoned me from Barbados, was already fixed in his mind. So when I tipped up for the interview, I got the job.
In your Jag.
Yes. Well, at that time, I had an XK150. Anyway, when I tipped up for the interview, aged 25, completely relaxed, suntanned, completely unconcerned whether I got the job or not, because I didn't need it. I was married to a very rich woman. I didn't care if I got it or not. I just go, and he liked me instantly. I thought, I'm going to give him the job. At least it's colourful. The bong, I got the job. I had no idea. Absolutely none. At my office, my secretary, etc., and I looked at what I had to do. The guy who'd been doing the job before me spent a day or so telling me about it. He's not very good. It struck me that he was bloody incompetent. And one of the first things I had to do was to order some brochures. And we wanted, for an event, and we wanted 5,000 brochures. I got it wrong, and I ordered 50,000. So my secretary comes in and she says, Bobby, I think we've got a bit of a problem. I'd only been there about a month or 6 weeks. What? There's a van outside. It's full of bloody brochures. What? Went out. There was this van. 50. Instead of 5,000. But I said, right. The guy, went back into my office. Several £1,000s instead of being 1,000. What should we do? Find it, I said. I'd summed up in my head with the accounts department, bunch of idiots who were just get it through. And I was right. And I'd done 5,000 brochures, as I should have done. And, of course, I was complimented. Well done. Well done, Robert. You've done a brilliant job. Well, very, very narrow scrape. Anyway,
You're lucky you had a secretary that covered your
yeah,
ass.
she was a really nice girl. And again, you know, I don't want to go into this, but you can imagine a very average little English girl, nice girl, and then this sort of character who was sort of completely out of her world league, you know, who lived a completely different life and everything else, coming along and being, because basically I thought to myself, well, what are they going to do? They're not going to kill me. I screwed up. You know, so I signed the damn thing, and if it come back to me, I would say, well, sorry guys, fire me. Because that's how I felt. Anyway, so this carried on, and then they made me a director of the French company. And my job was, at the age of 25, to do all their PR and publicity in France, Germany, Italy, Sweden, England, of course. And then I had to fly to the factory in Japan. I had to fly to Chicago. I was, my managing director said to me, I see you in a few years being a vice president in Chicago. You really well. And yes, somebody said, I was about 29.
You were there 4 years.
4 or 5 years, yeah. And I thought, oh, I just had this. It's boring. So I just.
And did you look at like your life further ahead and think, oh my God, I'm going to get depressed?
No, what I thought was I started drinking.
Okay.
Because I was going on flights, and I'd arrive at the airport in the Amsterdam or wherever. It was exactly the same hotel. You know, whether I was in Amsterdam or anything else, I'd be there 24 hours and I'd be flying somewhere else. And so I started drinking scotch just to buck me up. I thought, I'm on a slippery slope here. I did. I went to my boss, who was become a personal friend by then. I'm going. No, he said, Ed. I said, no, I'm going on. I left. That was it. And I thought, I'm going to start my own. This is where it's interesting for you. I thought, I've got a couple of contacts. I'm going to start my own PR, an international PR company.
And starting a business hadn't been in your head. When did the idea of doing your own business?
Just when I saw that I had a couple of clients and a couple of contacts which would give me, I thought, an ongoing business. Now, the first lesson you've got to know is that promises, when you're employed and important, is one thing. And the moment you've left that position and you're no longer employed,
They don't need you.
no one's there. Suddenly, gone. So I got my office. I got an office just next to Harrods, first floor.
You don't mess around.
No, I got an office. I got a secretary. I started work for one particular client, and then they vanished. The other one didn't materialize at all. So I wrote a circular letter to virtually every bloody important company in England had international contact, including Guinness, etc., etc. It's interesting that only two that replied were JCB, who at the time was still a small company, who said, "Oh, we really, really like to hire you as our consultant, but we don't think we're big enough to interest you."
Your reputation preceded you.
And the other one was Guinness, who said, they toyed around the idea. They said, we don't know if we're ready for this. And so, the thing is, if you meet somebody and they say they're a consultant, read unemployed. That's the truth. I was unemployed, basically. And suddenly, I was of no interest to anyone else because I didn't have that buying power, which I had as an international publicity director of a big American company. I was buying print, I was buying advertising, I was buying point of sale. I was of great importance. People were phoning me all the time, fawning at me. Suddenly, no one wanted to know me. No one. I sat in my office with my beautiful secretary, my feet on the desk, saying, "What the fuck?" Yeah. So a bloke comes along and says, "I'd like to interest you. We've got a project. You might be." They were called Mattel.
The toy company.
It was very small at the time, in 1990.
Really?
Bloke comes along, a couple of Japanese. You need somebody to promote up. This doll dressed as a soldier. It's Action Man.
G.I. Joe.
Yeah, a soldier. The first one, the original one. We're going to be marketing this, and would you like to do the PR and the thing, budget? And I said, looked at it. Promise. I've done worse than that since then. And I said, no. Anyway.
What kind of boy would ever want this?
Yeah.
The only kind of boy who would want this was was that curvy boy back when you were
yeah. And the other thing is, I said, but he's got a fucking Chinese face. He did have a slightly Chinese. I said, I'm sorry, guys, you're buying the wrong horse. And that was that. The first one. And then I thought, well, this can't go on. And at that stage, I thought, well, I'm going to have to give up the office of secretary and find something else. Now, interestingly enough, I then thought maybe I'm going to have to get a job again.
Was Omega in the back pushing you?
No, Omega was really relaxed. She didn't care, basically. She thought that there was a money tree, because her dad had always given her loads of money, and she'd inherited money, there was more money to come. She wasn't like that at all. She was really laid back about it, and that's why all the boys went to private schools. That's why she had an account at Harrods, and money was flying out. And this was now, I was now 30 years old, and I somehow came across a guy who was doing house clearances in London. time they were demolishing loads and loads of houses in London. And this guy got the contract to clear the houses. So he was clearing all these Victorian terrace houses. He got guys burning the mattresses, etc., etc. He said it's like a treasure trove. He said it's lucky dip. Boxes come back and I pull and there's a piece of china. There's, he said, so this guy was making a load of money. So I thought, hang on a minute, they're doing the same thing in Reading. So I set myself up with the council in Reading, or the councillor. I said, look, can I have a contract to clear the houses? He said, oh, why not? And the local mayor said, yeah, do it. So I got the contract for clearing the houses. So I employed a couple of blokes to do the same thing, get rid of stuff. And then I had the lucky dip. All this stuff was coming up. And so I opened a place in Reading. And what happened was that Bovis Homes were buying places to redevelop in the centre of Reading. And they'd bought a couple of warehouses, which they weren't going to get planning for a while. So they put it up for the rent. And I rented it and I started what became known as Great Reading Emporium, where basically I was selling all the wardrobes, patio, sofas, etc. When I was clearing out, they were going in there and we were selling them. And so I was driving up from my lovely estate down in Gloucestershire, E-Type, parking it outside my place there, and I had people coming in to buy second-hand stuff. At that moment, I met John Medeski, who became, John Medeski is the guy...
The stadium.
Reading Football Club, the stadium, etc. We became friends. And he said to me, Bobby, why don't you let this place out to other tenants, not bloody dealing in second-hand furniture, put some tenants in, make it like a little mini market, and open a jean shop. I said, why? He said, well, look what they're doing at something when they shop I think it's called the Jean or something in Reading City. So I rented a little shop in Union Street. I opened a shop called Stride Inn. Stride Inn. And we started doing what they called at the time loons. Loons were baggy, sort of flared pants, which we could buy in the East End of London literally for £1 each. And I used to buy these. I used to go up, still in the E-Type, pick up all my loons, drop them there. I had a couple of pretty girls in there. We were selling beautifully, no problem. So that's how I got into the rag trade. And I was in the rag trade for a while until a couple of events happened. All around me, first of all, 2 tenants in my Great Reading Emporium were arrested for drugs. One was producing the biggest LSD factory in Britain at the time. They were arrested. And another one, I didn't know, was actually the main supplier of hashish in Reading. He was a black guy and a good friend of mine. We got on really well. I didn't know. He had a front and he was basically selling reggae records. And in fact, he was supplying Reading with drugs. So, then, meantime, I'd opened another shop which I'd sold to a guy who had another shop, a sort of men's fashion shop, like trendy. And he also got done for drugs. He was another supplier. All around me were people who were getting arrested for drugs, including a guy who was a racing driver who befriended me, and he got done because he'd got all the spare tires in his cars were full of bloody drugs in Morocco. He'd got done. And one of the girls working for me came, Aaron, I think I was in this club the other day. I was in the booth. Booth behind me, there was the guys from the drug squad, the ID from the drug. And I could hear them talking, and they were saying, well, we've arrested so, aren't they? You know who's behind it all, don't you? It's that bloody French baron. He's too bloody clever.
He went to Cambridge.
And then he's got that bloody great estate in Gloucestershire. You know, flash bastard. It's him. It's a French connection. Because there'd been a film that had come out called The French Connection. And he's too clever. We'll never go. Yeah, we're going to fucking get him. We'll get him one day. And I thought, wow, when she said that to me, like, Reading, goodbye. Sold my shop, Indian gentleman, and I went to London, where I started my second business, which was, this happened because I went on holiday with James in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. Am I saying too much?
No, it's brilliant.
And while I was there, we went to a place called Ipoh in the north. He had a job working in security, head of Chubb, Far East. He went all over the Far East. And we went up to Ipoh and we saw people making cane furniture.
Cane furniture.
Cane furniture.
Okay.
And I said, gosh, this would sound really well. And so I talked to the guy in the factory. I said, would you be able to make it in knockdown form so we could ship it? Yes. He said, can you do me some designs? I went back to James's house in Kuala Lumpur. I did some drawings of furniture that we could actually assemble in England and would come in bits. And we formed this company called Fouché and Benrose. We got a shop. Now you're going to say, how did you do it? I had a friend who had a shop in the King's Road who sold sofas. And he said to me, well, Bobby, you can have a bit of space selling your stuff in my shop. This is what happens in life. You know, you use the contacts you've got. And he was an old Etonian friend of mine. He was a really nice guy. So he gave me a bit of space. I put samples of my furniture and I advertised in House and Garden, half a page in House, where we were flooded. Flooded.
This was a new thing back then, the whole cane furniture, and it
Right.
kind of had its big heyday, but now nobody has cane furniture.
That's right. At that day, it was just becoming
Very cool.
and suddenly there was this lovely, well-designed stuff, not the rubbish that's coming already done. Very modern, very beautiful cushions, beautiful fabrics, which I was getting from obviously all the contacts that you could have in England, the beautiful fabrics, the Warner, the Osbornes, all those nice fabrics that were available. And so my samples I'd made, I'd done up, really, they looked just up $1,000. So these orders just keep piling it. So we got, a container over, assembled it. And I was getting private orders, but I also got John Lewis wanted to do it. So, and Liberties. So I did a design for John Lewis and with John Lewis, they said, well, look, we're going to set up a little factory with you to assemble this stuff. We could do other stuff. And so we designed other stuff we were going to do out in the Far East, including sort of more progressive stuff, which has all become the rage since then. And we were having these 20-foot or 40-foot containers coming over from Southeast Asia, full of cane, which we were assembling. Initially, I was using a friend's barn, but then we started doing it with John Lewis. And then I get a chap called Johnny Kidd, who was a cousin of Lord Beaverbrook.
Name's
Famous,
famous.
yeah, the Express played by Lord Beaverbrook of the Air, young Lord Beaverbrook, and Kidd, who same family, mother, was a great polo player. Anyway, they and in fact his son, a great friend of my son Sasha's. Anyway, they came to me and said, "Look, we'd like to we formed this firm going. Can you do us some bedheads? We want a load of bedheads." Problem, we'll do bedheads. We'll do send the design off. Samples came back perfect. And what had happened, and I didn't realize, was that I can't mention any names. Somebody had fallen in love with the Chinese and had made her in charge of production. The Chinese girl, or stupid English, she won't know the difference, sent over it. So suddenly, that's the first warning I had. Bedheads are up. I got a phone call from young Lord Beaverbrook saying, Bobby, what the fuck's this? Come and have a look. Oh my, it was split, it damaged, shit. And then I got John Lewis. 2 days later, we just had a shipment. Come and have a look. The thinking that we would never do. We were just stupid, they thought. And that was it. That killed the golden goose. Bang.
And that was it. You got one chance with John Lewis. And
That's it. I mean, there was all this. First of all, they refused to pay for it. And secondly, they said, well, that's that. And that was the end of that. It's a tragedy. No one's spoken about it since. My friend James never mentioned it. We didn't speak for a while. And then
was everybody blaming each other?
No, they can't blame. They couldn't blame me. I was blameless. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? But thank God, at that time, I'd already started another project, which at the same time, running alongside it, I'd found an old garage, which was empty. They were trying to rent it out. And I took it on because of my experience I'd had in the Great Reading Emporium, where I'd let the whole thing out. I still was getting income from it. And I went to the planning people and said, I want to turn it into a whole load of little mini shops. I got the planning and I turned it into like a little mini arcade, like an indoor market. Can you imagine? And of course, let it, then had an income. I had 2 incomes coming in for doing nothing. And then, because I was having this income coming in, I didn't have to do any work. But I was looking at new ideas, new things. I was always looking at stuff.
Why were you?
Well, because I think what happens in life, and I think this is important, we're talking for young people who might be thinking, in life, doors open all the time. All the time. There are opportunities. All the time. Most people either don't see them,
Yes.
don't want to see them, or are frightened. Because even today, age 85, I've probably got 4 or 5 things that I could be doing, which I'm toying with the idea of doing, which if I was not 85, I was 45, I'd be doing. Because there's never been more opportunity as there is today. Never. Never. Because the economy is, because shops are empty, because people still haven't got a clue what they're doing. There is so much opportunity. So much. And it's so easy when you've got the experience of it, when you've got 50 years experience of running your own show, more than 50 years, 55 years. You know so much. You know that I could be bankrupt tomorrow and I'd start again with no problem at all.
No fear.
No fear, no problem. I know exactly what to do. I have no fear at all. And that irritates the shit out of me. Because he says, you're so cocky, you just think you can do. Well, because I'm very confident in myself. I'm also, that's another thing that pisses her off, I'm actually quite happy. Anyway, I mean, I'm telling you a whole bloody story here. It's a bit too much, but still.
No, it's perfect.
Yes, I had this income and I was looking at other things I could possibly do. And so I was toying with that and the other. I remember I'd been in the rack trade, I'd done the furniture thing, done renting things out, which were bringing me an income. And one day I was working with a famous group, I would mention, famous band. And I was also staying with my sister in Paris. My sister was an agent, her own company, an agent for TV stars, etc., for French actors, French agents, French producers, etc. She had her own company. And I started working with her a little. I was spending a lot of time in Paris. And I also had this friend who knew of his band. He worked with his band, very famous band, top band at the time. We're talking 83, 84. And I started doing some merchandising. So I was doing things like T-shirts, etc., held at concerts. I was hanging around with these people. I was coming across a lot of pop stars and people in the music industry. And they all tend to be great fun because that's how they are. They make a lot of money, quite often by accident. They deserve it. They think they deserve it. And the same was happening in Paris with my French people. And one day I was with this friend of mine, and we, for some reason, went into Oxford. We walked into Oxford, we walked into the covered market in Oxford. And I said to him, God, you know, this really good French cheese shop. He said, well, why don't we do one? Well, because we don't know anything about cheese. Well, it can't be that difficult. You buy the cheese, stick it on a cup.
How did cheese pop into your head of all the things?
Because this friend said, oh, I see. Because I knew somebody who had a cheese shop.
So they're doing well.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't. It was a cheese stall down in Gloucester, I think, or Cheltenham, I forget which. And he had and I don't know if you've heard of a chap called Charles Martel, who made a cheese called Stinking Bitch. Okay. And Charles Martel had a cheese stall in Cirencester Market. And I'd been to Cirencester Market over the years because I lived down there, and I'd always seen there was a queue at his cheese stall, at his little van, and I'd met him. And I knew he was putting his 2 children through public school from the earnings of that cheese stall. He always had a queue. There was no one selling cheese in there, except bloody bland cheddar. So I said to a friend of mine, Jerry, I said, look, let's do it. So we went to the council. They said, well, we've got one stall coming empty. What do you want? And we said, we want to do a cheese shop. They said, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, you can have it. So we took this pitch, and we didn't have any money really to spend on it. We didn't really want it. So we knocked up something, put a couple of cans on lease hire, and pay for anything. So for virtually no investment, we set up this. And if it had failed, we wouldn't have gone the way. And we filled it. I went down to London to an importer of cheese, bought some cheese, put it in. Well, because there was no one else doing this, we would just run off our feet. So I was in a bit of a pickle because I was now basically based in Paris with my sister. And I now had this thing running really well for me. So I was having to fly back and forth. I had a contract with Air France, a season ticket, if you like. And I used to travel. I used to fly to Paris on the Monday, and I used to come back on the Thursday. Then I'd spend the Friday, making sure I'd got all the cheese. And I'd actually spend physically myself in the shop on a Saturday, because people like to see me. And then I'd fly back on the Monday, having seen my children and my wife on the Sunday. So
you were the face of the cheese shop.
Yes, yeah.
So you were doing the publicity kind of. We're all the same going back to when you were 25. It was still publicity.
Yeah. I was a showman because, of course, I was dealing with showmen in Paris. I dealt with showmen in London, and I was, I was a bit of a personality in a car. Well, I was more than just a personality because if somebody pissed me off, I'd fuck off and go to Tesco's. So people loved it. People loved it. If some guy was being difficult, I'd say, "Oh, bugger off, go somewhere else." And then all the people would be, and used to love it. It was so good. Anyway, we were really, really busy, and we were one of the first cheese shops in the country. There weren't many. There was just a chap called Wells Stores in Streatley. There was obviously the one in Jermyn Street, one that's always been there. There were probably 4 or 5 cheese shops in the whole country. So we were really, really busy. We took a lot of money. And I got bored with it. I didn't want to do it. So I sort of basically got various people to run it for me. And I would just pop in once or twice a week.
Yell at a few people.
Yell at them, a bit of, It wasn't running as well as it should have been. But it still worked. It never stopped making. It was a money making. Meantime, I was in Paris and I was doing all sorts of stuff, and it was great fun. And I started working on film production. I got to know a lot of actors, including people like Alain Delon. And of course, we had some of our own stars in our stable. I should have stayed. But there were pressures here, including, basically family pressure. Omega wasn't well. My wife, she started having health problems. I had the boys who...
Did you know that was mental health problems right away, or did you just think, oh,
No.
she's just a crazy wife, crazy woman?
Oh yeah, it takes, you just don't understand. You think, was it really odd? Babe? You're being very unreasonable. Not, it's just, you know. Anyway, she, I had to take care of things. I could have just said, well, I don't want to know. And a lot of men would have done, but I didn't. And I had my sons, and they weren't too helpful either. William was very young, but Sasha was off the rails already. You know, drugs and everything. You know, I couldn't stay running the Paris thing with my sister, much as I wanted to. And I let her down, and she never really forgave me because I had my office, my desk, my phone, my contacts.
And this was the TV thing in Paris.
Yes, and I was doing really well at it. I was a natural agent. The actors liked me, the producers liked me. You have to be a certain kind of character where if they like you, you're ahead of the game. If they don't like you, you can't get anything done. When you're dealing with actors, you have to flatter them. Actors think they're the center of the world, even if they're pretty well second rate or not doing very much. What I would do, I mean, I'll give you an example. There was one particular guy, he had a part. He had, get it right. You can't hear me.
No, I'm just keeping an eye on it. I just want to make sure that we're not going to be complaining later on.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we hear you.
Check if you can hear me. Yeah, I mean, there was this particular actor, and I had responsibility for certain actors. And this guy was, he was a regular, he got regular jobs, you know, but he was a sort of second rate. You get him on there. There's always people like that in the acting. Some who have no work at all, some who are constantly in work, and then guy who gets the odd job here and the odd job there. And anyway, he got a part, and his part in this play, which was as Trocadero, was minimal. He was either the butler or something. He had a part in one act, and one scene, and then half an hour later another, and he basically had to say, "Your coat, madam," or something like that, in French, obviously. Anyway, I went to support him. I went to the thing and sat there in the first night, watched him. It was the first night, actually. It was daytime, matinee. And I watched him, and I knew he had another bit later on. I thought, I went across the road. It was a really nice brasserie. It was a nice day, and I ordered a bottle of nice white wine, maybe a Moselle or Sancerre or something, and some oysters. Enjoyed myself there, and I left a message for him to come and join me. Came across. I had a couple of drinks. And he sat down and he said, "You were fantastic. Oh, I'll tell you what, when you went on stage, no one else, just you." I said, "Yeah, but I didn't
Stroking the ego, huh?
I didn't have much of a part. I know. The way you delivered your lines, your coat, man. I mean, you could have said, your coat, man." I said, "It was bloody brilliant. I'll tell you what, you got such stage presence. There's only you." Really? Yeah, absolutely. But you can imagine the guy loved me. He adored me. It was like, now the other thing is that when you're in this position, is that you have young women throwing themselves in. I want an agent. And we were full. We couldn't take any more people. And Babette had chosen as her stars particularly unattractive women. But you got these gorgeous girls coming into the office and saying, "Can I please have a word?" And the secretary would say, "Bobby, there's somebody wants, would you like?" So the beautiful girl would come in and say,
Like the Harvey Weinstein.
yes, this is why. And she would say, and I said, "Well, I'm sorry, we're completely blood full. Anything. Well, I mean, anything. Well, I know what you mean, but no, I'm sorry." And my sister would come in and go, "What are you doing? You know we're not taking anybody." "Well, I'm just saying that." It was really funny. Anyway, I would have stayed. I would have had a really great career in that business because I was a natural. I was just like a Mr. Trump. I was a showman. And so I left and I came back basically to England to look after my cheese shop. Because I sold the other two places and got out of my markets. They've both been closed since then. But I mean, I did sell them. And I thought, well, I better make some money because actually I'd spent a lot of money. I'd got myself into a lot of debt.
Uh-oh.
And so I thought, well, hang on a minute. I've got this cheese shop. I've got to try. So I then opened a whole series of other shops. I had 6 at one stage. But then I discovered that actually having 6 was better off just having 1 running really well than 6 running badly. So I closed them all. In fact, I sold them all and actually created 6 businesses, if you like. And I just kept the one in the covered market. And on the back of that, I was driving back from Paris. And I thought, actually, I've got to have an exclusive brand to sell from my shop. I can't get anywhere else. And I thought, I'm going to create a blue cheese. I'm going to call it Oxford Blue. It's Oxford. And so I went, I got back and I went to see some Stilton makers. I said, "Would you make a cheese for me? I want to make a cheese called Oxford Blue. It'll be in the tradition of the Stilton, but creamier and softer and more like a Santa Good." So every one of them said, "Yeah, well, we'll have a go. Yeah, it sounds really good." But then I went to, there'd been a cheese made in the past called, forget the name of it. They'd done a Dairy Crest had tried a go at making a creamy, soft blue cheese, and it was called Limeswold, Lyme, and everybody called it Slimeswold. It failed, probably because the name Limeswold was not a very good name, and they'd sort of copied the German Camberzola type. So it was a creamy blue cheese with very little flavor, but the molds were still in existence. Make a 2 kilo or 2.5 kilo cheese, the molds were there, which they'd actually made. So I went to Dairy Crest, and they had a Stilton dairy called Hartington Dairy Creamery, and I went there and I said, using the Limeswell molds, can we make? So I got the young cheesemaker. We worked together to create Oxford Blue, which has been copied millions of times now. There are loads of people making a very similar cheese. Copied it.
All over the UK.
All over the UK, people making, I wouldn't tell the brands, but there's probably about 15 or 20 very similar cheese, which have copied my recipe, my formula. So we started making, we started selling it in the covered market at the top. And one of my customers went to Fortnum & Mason, and he was in Fortnum's, and he said, "Oh, there's a brilliant new cheese which we're getting in my shop in Oxford called Oxford Blue." And the buyer from Fortnum said, "Oh, got a number for him." I said, "Well, I'll get it for you." So I got Fortnum's on the phone saying, "Could we stock it?" "Yeah." Started flying Fortnum's. And remember, I hadn't invested any money in this project at all. I was making a small amount of blue cheese for retail in my shop.
What did you know about making cheese before this?
Well, I knew fuck all about anything. I said there's an exhibition at Birmingham at the NEC, which is a big food exhibition, which comes up in April every 2 years, and it's coming up. And I thought I'll take a stand there. I took a stand and I put my Oxford Blue in there, and people just went mad about it. And this woman comes along. She said, "I'm from Waitrose." "Oh yeah." Said, "We'd like to stock it." "Oh, okay. We want to take it nationally." "Right. We'll probably need about 200 to 300 cheeses a week." I was making about 10 cheeses a week at a time. I thought, okay. So I went back to Hartington. I said, "Look, you're going to have to make 200 or 300 a week." Well, of course, I had this big nose out of joint. Of course, they were really fucked off because they had their own cheese, which they'd started making in those molds, which they called Dovedale. And this cheese was not selling. So they weren't at all happy about my cheese taking off, which was because they basically copied my cheese. And they weren't selling it because no one liked the name Dovedale, I suppose. And Oxford Blue, people rose to it. So suddenly I was into Waitrose, and volume started. I then entered my cheese in the British Cheese Awards, which was I call it the nascent cheese. I mean, it was one of the first times they did the British Cheese Awards. And I got a gold medal. Can you imagine it? So fucked off about that. And then story just Oxford Blue has gone on selling up to today, even though there's so much competition, and a lot of people have discriminated against it. A lot of cheese shops will not stock it. They say it's not the proper cheese because it's not made in Oxford. It's got the name Oxford Blue. It's actually made in Preston, Lancashire, and they say it's just sticking a label on it. Well, what I say and what I said in an article I wrote about 2 or 3 years ago in the trade press, we are affineurs. An affinage is a craft that we do, which is completely acceptable in France and in Switzerland, where cheese is bought by one producer, taken, matured, altered, and then it's their cheese. And this is what I'm doing. Well, since I've wrote that article, every cheesemonger in Britain now calls himself an affineur. and they've now got a thing called affinage producer of the year. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, but what I'm trying to say is that I was able to demonstrate that what we do with Oxford Blue is perfectly legit, but there's still a lot of people who won't stock it. On principle, they say, no. But what's important is the clients like it, and we sell a lot of it. So I go, for example, into a thing, I say, "Have you got any?" No. And then they'll say, "Yeah, we get asked for it, but we don't stock it." I make out I'm a client, you see. I don't make out I'm myself.
If you were to come up with a new name now today to attract your cheese to, say, a 22-year-old, what would you call it? You'd have to be listening to the lingo of a 22-year-old. You know, they call it Lang. Everything's Lang. Oh, it's all Lang. Called Lang cheese or something. And have like some yardie man with a goatee or something on the cheese.
Do you think so?
Just thinking, because Oxford Blue now is, it's probably for someone who's 50 or 60 is going to be into that cheese. But if you want to attract a 20-year-old. So say if you had a grandchild now and they're like, "Oh, I want to start a cheese," and then they want to be trendy cheese. Cheese is kind of stuffy.
Yeah,
cheese is boring. I mean, I don't look at any kind of cheese and go, "That's very exciting."
Yeah,
not like say crisps. You look at crisps and they're all they have cool pictures on there, but it's just marketing.
Yeah. Well, the thing is this: what I realized was that the name Oxford has a huge weight. And by calling it Oxford Blue, the connotation is quality, rowing, all that. One of the things I did was that we are sponsors of the rowing club, Oxford University Rowing Club. We sponsor them. So we're on their website. It's on our cheese. So we are tied into Oxford that way. We're tied into rowing. My sauce, what did
You're
I
not,
call
you're
it?
not as inept as you first present yourself. There is a genius behind it.
Well, I don't know about that, but what I mean, for example, my Oxford sauce, I didn't call it Birmingham sauce or sheepscombe sauce or
Colony Road sauce.
I called it Oxford sauce, and I knew that by calling it Oxford sauce, I would be distinct from all the other products, whether it's Jamie Oliver's or what, who will always fade and change. The original is Worcestershire sauce, and it's still the one that they use in recipes and they use in bars in Paris and in Rome and in Venice. They don't use Jamie Oliver's Worcestershire sauce. They use Worcestershire sauce. And I wanted Oxford sauce to have that exact same ring. I want Oxford sauce. And Oxford sauce has got a very loyal following, which it's built up because it's a very good product.
It is actually.
Very good product, very good ingredients. It actually does enhance dishes. I mean, just for example, sardines. Open a can of sardines in olive oil. Pour some Oxford sauce on it. It's transformed. Suddenly, really, really nice. And you're making spaghetti bolognese. You wanted to spice up it. Oxford sauce brings it out. And it's a fact.
I chuck it in everything.
Yeah. And people love it. And we have, I mean, I've got people in Australia, right in America. I want Oxford sauce. I can't get it. Where can I get it? So we sell last year, we sold 25,000 bottles. Now that, of course, is nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. If you were HP, who sell 1 million or 2 million bottles, that's 25,000 bottles in people's homes.
And what's been the growth on that? Say 10 years or...
Well, it's gone up from 12,000. Well, it's gone up from fuck all. I mean, when I started, I literally did it in 50-litre jugs. And what is amusing is, of course, that the recipe changed when I made a mistake. We were making it, and the girl with me got the decimal point in the wrong place. It was meant to be 0.001 of chilies, and she put 0.1. So she put 10 times as much chili as we wanted. And I tasted it. I said, God, this is perfect. And that's the truth.
But again, that's genius, knowing to do that.
Yeah.
That's a door opening,
Yeah.
which a lot of people are like, oh, no, we got to stick to the original recipe.
Yeah, it's true. That's very true. But I think one of the secrets of my success, if you like, is that I've managed to negotiate through my life from a tender age to this present elderly age without any damage and still being incredibly vivacious and lively and fun-loving as I am today, has been the fact that I'm very fatalistic. I'm very, very relaxed about whatever happens. The old que sera, sera thing, really, I really believe in it. You can't go through life being anxious and worried. People say, well, why didn't you bloody pay for a pension? Well, because I didn't expect to live this long. I thought I was going to be dead. The amount of whiskey I've drunk, the amount of things I've done, I should be dead, but I'm not. Not only that, my liver's perfect. Going back to Oxford Blue, therefore, it's been a great success. It still is. It's on all the airlines, and the reason for this is that it's a cheese the airlines know, or rather the people who supply the airline, know that it is consistent in its...
So how do you stop the problem with what you had with the Chinese lady? How do you keep the quality?
Well,
know that you're going to have the same product.
Because all the product goes through my hands. It is delivered to my warehouse in Oxford, or outside Oxford, and from there, we keep it, mature it, whatever we need to do. Then we ship it out. We taste it, we look at it. We don't just ship it blindly out from the factory.
And how often do you have to make a quality control issue?
Every week. We do quality control every week. Every week we have a delivery, and every week it goes out. Every week we check the cheese.
So you learn from your mistake with the Chinese lady.
Yeah. The reason it's popular with the airlines or the airline suppliers, and the major one, the biggest one that supplies the airline, is because, as I said, it's consistent. Very important. They know that it's going to be the right consistency, thickness, creaminess, that when they cut it, it's not going to crumble, it's not going to break. They know that after 3 days in the transit till it gets onto the airline, it's going to be really creamy and nice because that's how it's produced. You know, they know now because we've been doing it for 20 years that it's, and then they say, oh, we need an extra 200. We can do it. You see? Whereas if they were to take, I don't know, some other blue cheese, they wouldn't know because unless they got some industrial production, you know, they would have a problem. So this is why we're on British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, Qatar, what it is, Airlines. All the airlines virtually take Oxford Blue in their first class. And that's incredible publicity because all these people, they on the plane.
Look at your website on it.
I love this blue cheese. Where can I get it? And that really pisses off the shops that are sort of, you know, hey, we don't sell it. People coming in and saying, I want some, I told you, I had it on the airline, it was bloody brilliant. Oh, we don't do it, sorry. But we do this. No, I don't want that. But and again, I basically don't. I don't care. If tomorrow it all fell apart, I don't care. That's really important. Now, that is a fatalistic thing. You know, there's so much happening in the world, so much horror, so much, etc., etc. You've just got to put things into context. If you've got a setback, it's not the end of the bloody world. You're not dying of terminal cancer. You've just got a problem.
Just money.
Yeah. And you can as I've said, there's always opportunities, there's always things happening. And usually there's 2 or 3 things you're interested in anyway. So you could just switch into something else, which is, if you look at my career, is exactly what I've done. So then the blue cheese came along, and then I've done other cheeses since then. And one thing I can tell you, do not employ family. Because, of course, what happens is you've got this thing of having somebody who's working for you. You say, look, for heaven's sakes, don't do that. You don't love me. You don't speak to me like this. I'm your son. Oh. This is what happens. Never employ family.
What about someone like Donald Trump? He only employs family.
Well, his son-in-law, not his son. He's got a young son. I don't know what's going to happen there. I think he's going to be the next king of
6'10".
Yeah, he looks great, doesn't he? Never employ sons. I think you can employ daughters, possibly. But even then, you're probably going to get tears. Eh? And the other thing is, very cautious about employing your wife. I'm not going to say any more on that. But that is, of course, you go to bed, and the next thing she's saying to you, oh, God. Anyway, cut a long story short now, because we're getting to the end. I've learned 2 things about running a cheese business or any business. It's all about branding. It really is. Because if you've got a brand, you're not in competition. If they want your brand, that's a price. That's it. If they don't want your brand, don't have it. If they want it, so create a demand for your brand, and then they've got to have it. Even the supermarkets come crawling at your door. No, not selling it to supermarkets, because I know what I've sold Oxford Blue through Sainsbury's. Let me tell you, that was a disaster. Because what happens is, you're going to have to work according to their system. Their system is that you have to supply the cheese at a central warehouse at this amount of sell-by date, and then as it hasn't sold, you've got to come back and take it back. And then every month, they say they've had a complaint, 75 quid. On your bill, you get your statement at the end of the month, there's 75 quid taken off. Complaint. 75 quid, complaint. And I know Lord Chewton used to make a cheese called Chewton Mendip cheese. This is back in the 80s. early 90s. He was a brother of Waldegrave, the Miss William Waldegrave. Do you remember William? Anyway, his brother, Lord Chewton, had a big estate, and he was making cheese, cheddar cheese, called very, very popular cheese, traditional cheese. He packed it in. He said to me, look, I've got over £1 million tied up in cheese material. And I'm having to cut out these wankers. I'm not making any money. I've had to set up a whole unit, cutting it to their things, etc., etc. And any minute now, they could decide they don't want to use me anymore.
All these suppliers are like,
So
they just want their own name brand. They want everyone just buying their own name brand, and then they can choose who they buy it from.
that's right.
Tesco, in
Especially-
particular, is
yeah.
very ruthless at that, aren't they?
Awful people. And but Sainsbury's just as bad, terrible. I went to a meeting drawn up by Sainsbury's when they were, this is years ago. They were looking to use more small individual producers for their top stores. So we were invited to a meeting, and there was, I knew virtually every single of the producers there. These were farmhouse producers, making cheddar, making Caerphilly. And the woman going on about how caring they were. At the time, I was already supplying Sainsbury's, and I knew how bloody difficult it was, and how it really wasn't profitable. And I said to these people that we were talking, I stood up and said, well, I'd like to say to you assembled gentlemen, I've got to warn you that all you've listened to there is complete bullshit. I've been working there, and it's a nightmare, and I'm about to pull out. You're going to have to deliver to a central warehouse for expense. You're going to have censures of £75 for so-called complaints you've got proof of. You're going to have to collect your stuff when it hasn't sold, because it has to be sold by a certain sell-by. You're at their mercy. You're flattered because Sainsbury's want to do your fools. I was shown the door. I've had Tesco come up for Oxford sauce. They came in recently and said, we'd like Oxford sauce. And I said, no, of course I'd be interested. Well, we'd have to have it at this price because we'd want to sell it at that price. Do that. Making no money. And then you'd be undercutting all my existing customers. I can't do it. The guy said, not even for the, what do you call it? For the great Tesco?
Premier.
Yeah. I said, no. No, I don't want it. And I'm plumbing my own little system. Obviously we've got a website and stuff. What I'd like to do with it is to make it under license in America.
Yeah.
To find a producer who will make it out. It'll be called Oxford sauce, but it'll be actually blended there. No reason why not. I'd like to have the same thing in China.
I think Japan would probably be great as well.
Yeah, but China would be, because they're mad about Oxford.
Are they?
Oh yeah, everything Oxford. And so that would be really the thing I should be doing. I should be harnessing somebody of caliber, because I can't be fucking do it. But I mean, I should. I've been thinking that for some time. I've had people asking me, do you want to make it in Australia? Do you want to, nothing's come of it, because basically it means going there, selling the idea, probably staying in America for a few weeks. And I could do it. I might do it.
Are there regulatory issues there, though, with saying, with having anchovies in it and things like that? Because I think some of the stuff you put in there is a bit avant-garde, I think would be the French word for it.
Yeah, but they could do that in America, it would be no problem. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, paste, you mean? Yeah, no. Paste is accepted ingredient for loads of stuff. Yeah. Oh, God, yes. No. Tamarind, no problem. There should be no problem. Anyway, you could alter that. I was thinking of removing anchovies and placing seaweed, a salty seaweed in there, because then it's vegan. But I discussed it with the woman who makes it for Dulcia. She said, be careful. She said, you've got a blend that works. Take one thing out and you suddenly it's not the same thing. It'll be just a little bit too acid or not as complex. Just keep it as it is. What I've been told is put the price up. Make it very exclusive. I thought, well, actually, I'm going to wait till it's more accepted, and I will. It's going to be really expensive. The best thing of a bit of advice I've heard was actually on a TV program. There was this guy, I forget his name. He was a troubleshooter with companies that were in trouble. And he said the biggest mistake people make when they're not selling enough of them to reduce the price. Because you've now got to sell more to achieve the same profit. Because the margin's gone down. He said it should do exactly the opposite. Put your price up. Because you could less, higher margin, you make the same profit.
You're not the busy fool.
And that's really true. I've never gone down the route of being bargain basement. No. Certainly with the Oxford sauce, I've had to be competitive. I can't have it at sort of £4 a bottle, and the next one next door to it is all human sauce, and it's £1.50. People are conscious of that sort of thing. But when you've got a reputation to the point where they just want it, then you can whack it up. And actually, people like it. It's special.
What does it do at Waitrose? Don't you sell it at Waitrose, or you were selling it?
Does it Waitrose? Where I'm seeing the buyer. Because Waitrose discontinued doing Oxford Blue some years ago because the then buyer went along with that thing of it's not a real cheese, because he was going on about you wanted terroir, you wanted to know what the cow's name was, etc. Well, that's what it's gone down that route, Oh yeah, what season was it made in? A load of crap, basically. My cheese is a brilliant cheese, bloody good cheese.
And you've used the same supplier all the way through?
No, I've chopped. The one I'm with now, I've been there for about 12 years. He's very, very good. And that's a great thing about a good supplier. And you see, he's copied my recipe and he sells it under a different name. Okay? But the great advantage is making enough volume to supply himself so that I can say, I need an extra 200 this week. Whereas if he was only making for me, he'd be making X amount every week, and I might suddenly have a surplus. Hang on, you haven't sold any last month. I made 3,000 and you only sold 2,000. I've got 1,000 cheeses sitting here. What are you going to do? I haven't got that problem. So, of course, I encouraged him. I said, yeah, by all means, make your own under your own label, because he hasn't got the brand name. So he's selling his to Marks and Spencer's under MS or whatever, or wherever he's selling it to, I don't know. But it means that the volume means that I've got it on tap whenever I want it. I give him an estimate of what I want, but it's a rough estimate. And if I'm short of my orders by say 300 or 400 cheeses, no difference in the mill. First of all, of course, you could keep it back, and I like it mature anyway. So, for your listeners who want to know about starting their own thing, having a very strong identity or brand is crucial, because that's what's going to set you aside from all the others. You're in a very competitive market. Whatever you do, you'll be in a competitive market. You'll be copied. You'll be undercut. So you've got to have a very strong identity, and that's something that you might have to work at for several years. Now with online, with the internet, you can work at that. Especially if you're astute doing it. You've got kids who are making money selling T-shirts.
Hot. Very big. And you can start a fashion brand now.
Overnight.
With virtually no work.
Right. And they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about that is that there again, in order to get the followers and to get the sales, you've got to have an identity which takes you apart. And it can be by having a football star as a mate to whom you give a button, who wears your gear. Which I know a perfect example. A young guy used to work for his dad in the building industry. He's now self-employed, running his own fashion thing. He's got a tame footballer, famous one, who not only does he wear his gear, but says to his followers, there's only 100 of these, and I've got one. They go online, they're sold. And you know, he's sort of, I mean, we're talking big money, 300 or 400 quid for a tracksuit.
Hey, it's all about the brand.
All about the brand. All about marketing. And in fact, I've said to that idiot Harley who works for me, Harley, it's not about distribution. It's not. It's about branding. Let the other fuckers do the distribution.
You got the good brand, the people will come to you.
And they'll distribute. You don't actually do it. You use distributors to sell your brand. You don't do anything. And if you're online like that, it's the actual producer that does the distribution. They mail it. You do nothing. In China, they'll mail it for you. They'll do the whole bloody thing.
You can just be the person in between.
Exactly. And their minimum order quantities, a POQ, what they call it, can be as low as 10. You've got to go there, you've got to talk to these people, and then you come back, you go online, you've got somebody they call, you know, some guy who's got a lot of followers, you put it on, you sell it. Now, I'm going to be doing this with Oxford Sauce. Now, I'm going to make Oxford Sauce a brand, not just a sauce, but a brand, because Oxford Sauce can mean several things. It doesn't mean automatically the sauce, it can be a taste, Oxford Sauce. It can be an idea, a way of dealing with people, a day of Oxford Sauce.
It's genius.
Yeah. So I've got a girl working on it, but she's not really doing very much work. So really, I need somebody who's going to take this to the next level. I've got a very good designer, excellent designer. But I need somebody who's going to be able to say, right, well, we're going to have to market this online, but I'm an expert at it, which I'm not. I've got to find somebody really, really hot, not somebody who's half hot, somebody who's really good, really cool. I was going to say, right, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and we're going to mark Oxford Sauce is just a brand. People would want to be carrying a cap with Oxford Sauce on it because it means I'm fucking clever. Oxford Sauce.
Sauce.
We might even get a wrapper. It's another sauce, Oxford Sauce. You know? You can see, it's exciting. And what am I talking about doors opening? They open all the time. So of course, I'm thinking, I should be doing this. But I'm 85. Most people are there. My doctor said to me, I see people coming here, they're doubly incontinent. They can hardly walk.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah, he said, you're remarkable. He said, you're just extraordinary.
Good genes, huh?
Yeah. I say, well, I wank 3 times a day.
What, not wanking, you're getting your dick sucked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's better. Right, well, do you think you've had enough?
Thank you very much. That's really been amazing. You've been able to
I think
keep it going.
given a few hints for people anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to come away and say, right, I'm starting my own brand.
Well, you never know. You get people coming to you saying, I want to distribute your Oxford sauce in China or something. You never know.
This is important that we do this. You should get involved, Rafi, because you'd be really good at it. We do it, we make it under license. And also this idea of making Oxford Sauce a brand which is just not the sauce. The sauce is how it started.
That's the genius part of it, which I hadn't ever considered.
Yeah.
It becomes an idea.
Yes. Especially a philosophy. You know, I've got the Oxford Sauce. I got it, man. That's the thing. That's going to be work. Right, I'm going to shoot off.
Thank you very much.